Under the leadership of Superintendent Dr. Samuel T. King, Norfolk Public Schools and our community have shared a journey towards success. For the past year, our school district has been working diligently to ensure that all students succeed. They're redefining what urban public education looks like, and they're raising the bar and offering higher levels of support to prepare our students for a future that we can't even begin to imagine. On each of your tables is a yellow card that looks like this. As Dr. King is making his presentation, if there are questions that you have, please jot them down on these yellow cards and hold them up, and some of the staff will come around and collect the cards for our question and answer period after Dr. King's presentation. And I ask you all, please, have mercy on these over 40 eyes and write legibly, please. Thank you. Dr. Samuel T. King is a native of Smithville, Georgia, and he has 28 years of public education experience. He was sworn in as Superintendent of Norfolk Public Schools on July 2nd, 2012, after 7 years as Superintendent of Rockdale County Public Schools in Georgia. He began his career as a classroom teacher of mathematics and science at the high school, middle, and elementary levels. Dr. King attended Mercer University, earning a Bachelor of Arts degree in middle grades education. He then went on to get a master's degree and specialist degree in education administration and supervision from University of West Georgia. He received his doctoral degree in educational leadership from the University of Sarasota. Dr. King is a member of numerous professional organizations, including the National Education Association, the Georgia Association of Educational Leaders, and the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development. He is married to Ms. Pearl King. They have 3 sons and a daughter. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Superintendent of Norfolk Public Schools, Dr. Samuel T. King.
I too would like to say good morning to each of you, and it is certainly a pleasure to have the opportunity to stand before you this morning to talk about the most important work that we do. And I want to emphasize that term, the most important work that we do. There, of course, is clear delineation between roles and responsibilities around educating our young. However, if we are going to meet the challenge head on and defy the norm in terms of the process for educating our children in an urban environment, then we must implement what I refer to as those best practices that are scientifically based. So with that said, this morning is a best practice. The fact that you are here, because this is an example of stakeholders coming together to talk about the work, to engage around the work, and to determine what our roles might be, and the whole notion of moving this organization forward around 34 to 35,000 children and families. With that said, I would like to thank the Norfolk Education Foundation for making this possible. And you do know that this was planned to occur earlier in the year, but greater forces made a decision that forced us to change that. And so inclement weather came into play with that. So I am happy that you decided to be with us this morning, as we were going to do this several months back. So thank you to the Norfolk Education Foundation, also Kim George's work with the foundation and all of the members that are involved. Thank you to Carlos Clanton, which is our representative for the foundation and our connection, our liaison, the person that leads, guides, and builds the process in terms of engaging stakeholders around the work of educating our children. So I applaud all of you, each of you. In addition, our board, they have been recognized and mentioned this morning, but I want to reiterate that without a powerful focused and polished governance leadership team, the work cannot be done at a high level. And so when I speak of a governance leadership team, I speak in terms of the entire board, collectively as a unit, a 7-member board, along with the superintendent, focused and resilient and relentless as it relates to the work that must be done for our children. So I applaud our board members for the work that they've done in a short period of time. Also, I want to recognize our business partners that are interested in the direction of this school system, and rightfully so. Members of the chamber, I had an opportunity to address the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce a few days ago to talk about the work as well. So I applaud you for being a huge component of this work. And school officials. If I have school officials here, I certainly need to recognize you. If you're here, wave your hand or stand and be recognized, because I think that all of you deserve a round of applause. Could I have my school officials stand if you're in the room? Thank you. We applaud you for the work that you do each day. In addition, central office officials. Our central office officials are with us this morning as well, consisting of cabinet members. And if you're with us, I want you to stand and be recognized as well, because as I get into the real substance of this, I'm going to touch upon your roles throughout. So thank you. And of course, our special guests outside of any of those categories, of course, our teachers, that's really where the rubber meets the road. And we know that they are in the classrooms as we speak, diligently working to take care of the next 5 weeks that we have before us to approach the summative assessment that the forces use to define us. And we will talk about that as well. City officials. We have worked very hard to develop a process that allows us to partner with the city, because we're in this business for the same reasons, whereby the school system is responsible for the 35,000 approximately students and families, but we're also responsible for about 6,000 to 7,000 employees in addition. And the work of this, and of course our work is around educating children and to ensure that our children graduate college and career ready. Well, there's a perfect segue and huge implications for the work of the city. Of course, the city represents all of us in terms of development as it relates to the economy, in terms of attracting those entities that would like to invest in the livelihood of this city. And if they are going to do so, one major player in that process is the public school division. And so, thus, the importance of the partnership as it relates to economic development. And I will touch on those things this morning as well. So, again, thank you for being with us. I will move forward to talk about the work that is before us. It truly is a shared journey towards success. But I'll begin by mentioning our board priorities. And I think that the importance for this group and this audience really is around process and how we enter into the work. And I want to emphasize that this morning. And as I prepare to go into the tenets of that process, I will mention to you a little bit about me. You heard some of the intro, but I have been in the work of public education for 29 years. I started out as a teacher. My mom and dad were teachers. My dad was a mathematics teacher. My mom was a literacy person, language arts and reading. And as I grew up in that household in South Georgia, rural South Georgia, where we had to work extremely hard at the time, and I wondered why I was there. And the first thing I wanted to do was plan to get out. But at this point, I value that because it instilled in me the work ethic and the tenacity that's necessary to do this work. And this is truly a calling in terms of the passion that must be behind transforming urban education, transforming education, period. But we are about not reforming, but transforming our system as it is to benefit each child. Very important. So starting out as a teacher for me was of vital importance because I had the opportunity to teach at all three levels: elementary, middle, and high school. I taught grades 4 through 12, all of those grades with the exception of 8th grade, I believe. And so I mention that because it is significant, because I was able to walk in the shoes. Moved from there to the administrative ranks, became an assistant principal for the high school level, also served as an assistant principal at the elementary level, served as a middle school principal, then moved into central office, having responsibility for multiple schools, etc. Area executive officer, assistant superintendent in several different departments and multiple responsibility across several different departments, and then became a superintendent. I served for 7 years, 7 years out of the 29 as superintendent for Rockdale County in metropolitan Atlanta, Georgia. And upon the completion of my tenure there, I decided to take this opportunity to do great work. And this is the work that I feel that I am placed on this earth to do. So, enough of that. Board and division priorities. What is a good descriptor in terms of who we are and where we are and of vital importance? What does it mean to the audience? What does it mean to us? First off, you must understand that when we entered this process last July, about 8 months prior to today, we quickly realized that we did not have a 5-year strategic plan. So we didn't have the blueprint that was the guiding force behind the work. So mission, which is your purpose, vision, which is what causes you to dream, and focus, your direction, and align the work that you do, those things were not in place. So I applaud the board and the administration for quickly coming together in about a full 2-day session of pretty tedious brainstorming around internal and external statistics, internal and external variables that were very important for our work this current year, 2012-13. So we knew that we had to diligently work around those items, have those discussions, involve the people, and make decisions around what we knew we needed to do this current school year. Thus, the priorities that you see on the screen. Everybody was involved in that process. Relevant, pertinent data, the things that we knew we needed to begin to tackle to start the whole notion of transformation. So, I'm not going to read those to you, but I'm going to highlight what you see there, because ensuring full accreditation is what you see as number 1. And we know that that's important, because ensuring full accreditation is really about increasing the percentage of children that master standards, really master the elements of the standards. And so that is the curriculum that is taught each day in the classroom, aligned with the SOL and the standards of learning. We know that we have to ramp the process up of having more students proportionately meeting and exceeding standards. So we knew that. The data around that was pretty explicit and pretty clear. And so while that group understood that, the group also understood that number 2 should not be merged with number 1, although if you accomplish number 2, in my view, then you take care of number 1. But it is about communication, it is about being transparent, and it is about the stakeholder taking a look at this and knowing that we're going to be true to the cause. So once we list item number 1 as ensuring full accreditation, and then item number 2, which speaks to increasing the percentage of students meeting and exceeding standards, then you know that we are about not just closing the achievement gaps that face our students and our system, but eliminating those gaps. And so that was important to the group. And I want you to kind of think about, okay, what does this mean for me? Because that's what this is about this morning in terms of what we do with our education foundation, your role in the process, because we're going to move into strategic planning and the process that we chose to use. And I would urge you to ask yourselves, are you involved at any level? Have you been involved at any level? And if not, where should you fit? Because this is our work. We are responsible, we are accountable, and we don't hesitate to say that we are, and we don't hesitate to do so. However, we do know the research, and we know the research around effective schools, especially effective urban systems. And it is about the partnerships, and it is about the alliances that you must build in doing so. The school system cannot live apart from the community. And so as we have analyzed the trends over the past 10 plus years, we realize that we have lost students and families. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. As I preach to the choir, sometimes I typically do. However, I think it's important. Over a period of about 5 years plus, we've lost about 5,000 students plus. All right, so you ask yourself, what does that mean? That means that sometimes it's, through attrition, families just decide to move away, they take other jobs and careers. But the other piece around that is that sometimes beyond elementary school, they choose to go private and not go middle and not go high school. And many times they choose that because of the perception. And sometimes perception becomes someone's reality. And sometimes they make those decisions based on facts. And so that's brutal reality that we must face as we do the work. And I'm saying these things because all of those, that type of mindset is built into the process for planning for us. And I submit to you that you should be encouraged by that. So, as we know we've lost those students and those families, we know that we can also attract them back. We also know that we can build a strong public education existence. And so that families that have decided that they're going to tap into their college funds and pay for private can decide otherwise. And so that's part of our work. And that's our quest. So improving climate, safety, and attendance. It goes without saying that we want the very best in the classroom. We want the very, very best in our organization. And we want them to be excited about coming to work. In order to do that, you must support them. You must provide them the necessary resources, tools, and skills. And that's what we centered on. Becoming a board of distinction. I mentioned the governance leadership team. That's the 7-member board and the superintendent working together to develop policy that will support our direction in this blueprint for this current year, but to support our direction for the next 5 years in the 5-year strategic plan that I will touch on. So, a governance leadership team that functions as a policy-making body and a body that provides the capacity for this organization to do the work, and a body that focuses on the ends, which would be the expectations, and what they want this system to become. They define that, and we determine the means for reaching the end. And so all of those things are things around which our board gets better and better each day, becoming polished and becoming that board of distinction. I talked about perception. I talked about all of the things that come into play when you have schools that are not accredited, when you have schools that have struggled. Then people form assumptions about who you are and the work that we do. We know that we must turn the tide. Therefore, we know we must transform our public education system. And in doing so, we must have a mechanism in place in our robust communications department that allows us to talk about the outstanding accomplishments and attainments across the board of our staff, our students, and our stakeholders throughout. In addition, technology, capital projects. You've heard a lot about the partnership between the city and the school system and implications around building schools that are hugely necessary, whether it's renovation, whether it's new construction, whether it's upgrade, and then in terms of technology. Prime example for you as a group, our children are required from a summative assessment standpoint, whether we like the assessments or not, they're here to stay. So it is our responsibility to prepare our children to be able to compete globally as it relates to that. So if we're going to do so, then we need to be prepared and primed to give them those opportunities from a formative standpoint, weekly, daily, that will prepare them for online assessments, because that's where the state is right now. Our assessments are going to be online, from the writing assessment to the literacy assessment to the numeracy assessment. So just think about that. I think back to my days in grade school. It was a little bit different, and I'm sure yours was as well. And you know that if we did not do the work in the way that we were expected and from a summative standpoint, and we experienced that the first time when it was high stakes, then we're placing our children at a disadvantage. So if we properly plan, then those things are factored in. So thus, the infrastructure for our school system as it relates to technology, huge. When we look at that and forecast out in terms of upgrading our technology infrastructure, rebuilding the connection to platforms from a hardware standpoint, whether it's laptop carts, whether it's iPads, whether it's real-time connection with the gadgets that they have every day in their hands anyway, you know. So if we're going to be innovative, we must talk about those things, we must do the research, and we must transform how we do that work. Be bold enough and courageous enough to make those decisions. So that's important. Attracting and retaining the very best. And I talked a little bit about the families that have left. Some will choose to probably not return, but that's okay. You don't win them all. However, we want our stakeholders to make decisions based on the resources, the tools, and the quality that we have to offer. Not the opposite of that. Not make those decisions based on what they think we can't offer. That's the turning of the tide. That's the transforming of this system. So when we talk about attracting, retaining, and helping to develop strong academic families and highly qualified teachers, that's of paramount importance for us right now. And we're at about 99% plus of highly qualified staff. That's a good figure. But we feel that it is not strong enough because we're working on that, because highly qualified does not always mean highly effective. Highly qualified means that we're credentialed and that we are operating in our area of expertise. Highly qualified and highly effective means that you are good at what you do and you're credentialed and you get results. So that's what that's about. Now, That's this year's work. That's what we've been working on for 8 months. And so around those priorities, we have goals, we have action steps that are research-based. We also have measurements that will give us a description of what success should look like. We have targets, meaning how much growth can we agree to for this current school year. And then we have absolutes, because in some cases we know we're starting so far behind that we need to develop targets for progress and know that we won't get the absolute around the first year. So those things are embedded and that you won't see. So a pretty massive document around those priorities with plans that are embedded. And I'm just going to capsule, in my view, the essence of what you'll find in that plan. So what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story for us this current year is that we must focus on teaching and learning. And what you see on the screen is of paramount importance to us. Simply put, it means that we must ensure and hold all of us accountable for teaching the rigorous standards that are required, the SOL. And so once we know that those items are being taught, the question is, how do we know? And examples are around lesson planning. We can do a random review of lesson plans, but that's not enough. What about focus walks? What about visits into the classroom to see evidence of the fact that it is being done? These are things that are being implemented this current school year. So, number one, knowing that the right stuff, for the lack of a better way to say it, is being taught. Number two, measuring learning. Knowing that the elements of the standards are being mastered. So how do we know? We know based on teacher-made assessments aligned to standard. We know based on project-based assessments aligned to standard. We know based on common formative assessments that teachers come together to do aligned to standard. But we also know, with another safety net for us, which is a snapshot, benchmarks that we do at the central level. They are designed to assess how much learning took place over a period of time. So multiple indices and multiple indicators of progress around what children should know and be able to do. And so once we analyze those results, then we form a conclusion. Percentage of children being successful, percentage of children that didn't see success. The question is, how do you turn that analysis into action? That means for us that we provide safety nets for those students that didn't get it, and we provide enrichment for those that were successful, meaning the full end of the spectrum, meaning caseloads of students. We want to move students from the struggling category, not on standard, to on standard, then to exceeding. If a student is already in the exceeding ranks, then we want to push them and move them higher. We call it raising the floor and the ceiling simultaneously so that we reach each child. The catch, however, is that we must accelerate the rate at which we raise the floor in order to close and eliminate the achievement gap. That's what this is about. Excuse me. So what does a teacher do when students aren't learning? That's about the safety net. What is the concrete evidence of mastery after this intervention? These are the simple questions that we ask when we do our walkthroughs. Number 5, what does the teacher do when students are performing beyond expectation? How are we challenging those students? How are we pushing them? How do we enrich them so that we reach the full spectrum? So it's not just about the student that didn't get it. It's about the student that was successful and pushing those students to the next level as well. That capsules our work for this current school year around those priorities. The 5-year plan. At the same time that we are implementing around those 7 priorities and the work plan, we've also begun to move forward with our 5-year strategic plan. I'm just going to give you a quick, brief outline of that process. We brought together a 30-member planning team, made up of parents, business owners, faith-based, healthcare, law enforcement, post-secondary, internal audience being principals, teachers, central office staff, about 30 people, reflective in many ways of a microcosm of this community, to talk about the work. And their first order of business was to begin to develop community beliefs around public education in Norfolk. Where are we strong? Where are we weak? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? And so, through doing so, we also held public forums. We listened to the people. We had hundreds of people to come out to engage them in conversation around these items. And so, at this point, action plans are being developed around several strategies that 30-member planning team put together. That 30-member planning team had the challenge of developing those community beliefs, the mission vision, also parameters around doing the work, objectives, and strategies. And they had the task of securing agreement, not consensus. So you can imagine the kind of tough discussions that took place. At your tables, you should have a white paper of sorts that gives you a status update on that process. I urge you to pay close attention to it and find your passion within this document, because at the end of this school year, we will have completed a 5-year strategic plan. This is just an executive summary in some form around what's important, what is surface, what did the 30-member team pinpoint as the community beliefs, what is the mission and vision. And I'm going to talk a bit about that in a few minutes. So I know somebody's timing me in a minute because I feel somebody looking at me from the right side. So I will kick it in high gear. All right. And so we plan to begin implementation at the end of this school year with this 5-year plan. But I want you to understand the method and the madness. We needed the 7 priorities and the work plan for this current school year because we couldn't afford to waste time or lose a year. But at the same time, simultaneously, we want to move forward with an innovative process that is research-based that would give us a living, breathing document that would take us into the future. So we wanted to dream. That's what we want the people to do. Determine the highest aspirations for our organization and begin to develop strategies to take us there. So we're poised with that. You have this at your table so you can take a look at some of those beliefs. And I'll pause for just a second because I want you to look at how powerful I think these beliefs are. And they are community beliefs. But remember, the superintendent didn't develop these beliefs. I was a member of the team. I'm a certified strategic planner, but it's not good for the chief officer to lead that, in my view, because then it becomes yours. But we wanted the team to have ownership in the process as they formed the plan. So you see the beliefs, the community beliefs that they said were important as we do our work. And so you see 4 of those on the screen. You also have those provided for you on the inside portion of this, page 1, I guess we'd call it. And so you see beliefs around a myriad of things. And I want you to look at that because I want you to determine your interest. And so as we advance, you hear about the strong leadership, about diversity being a strength. And I think of paramount importance for this group this morning, the belief that successful public schools are the foremost opportunity for economic development and community well-being. When we all come to the realization that this is where the rubber meets the road, then we will be able to raise the whole notion of doing the work to an exponent. And we will be able to accelerate that work. And we're well on our way. And then 2 bullets here that I think are of paramount importance for us as well. Fostering positive and meaningful relationships, stakeholders, and helping students to reach their highest potential, believing in each child, changing the dropout rate, accelerating the graduation rate, but creating non-traditional opportunities for children that have struggled, that might have those challenges at home. Do we ignore those challenges and plan accordingly? Or do we include those challenges in the planning process and provide additional non-traditional opportunities for these children? I would submit to you that the latter is very important. Believing that public education is an investment, and that's why you're here, and a shared responsibility for schools, families, and the community. These are statements that this 30-member planning team developed. They developed these statements around what we should do, the framework and the bedrock for our work, reaching agreement on the development of these, not consensus, but agreement. Now, the mission. Take a look at that. It's before you, but this is what they developed. This is a mission vision statement. Mission meaning what is the purpose of our school system? Vision meaning what's our direction? In the future, what do we aspire to become? If you take a look at the first portion of that where it says that our school system should be the cornerstone of a proudly diverse community, that's the visionary piece that this planning team developed. Because they said, that's not who we are yet. That's what we want to be. That's why it's visionary in the view of the team, and I agree. This system needs to be the cornerstone of a proudly diverse community. Think about the connection to economic development, partnerships, businesses, and all the things that come into play when you become that cornerstone of a proudly diverse community, because you have a successful, world-class public education system. What is our mission based on what the team said? It said we have a two-part mission. One, meaning we must educate children, maximize academic potential, but we're also responsible for the affective piece, social adjustment, being able to commingle, group dynamics, all those things that come into play. Clearly communicate with your peers. So develop skills for lifelong learning and become successful contributors to our global society. And we have listed, that team listed means for carrying this out. So purpose and vision. So clear here. They develop objectives, and I'll just briefly draw your attention to the fact that they said all students, all students, all students, all students, across all of these things. They said to us that we must be responsible for 100% of our children, not 85, not 90, not 95%, because who's going to commit to failure for 5%? We're going to commit to success for 100%, thereby falling amongst the stars as we do the work. And if a child does fall short, we still leave that child at a level whereby he or she can move on to college, vocational or technical school, military, or the world of work with an area of specialty and or industry level certification. So, very important for us in terms of measurements. Self-imposed rules. What are we committed around in terms of not violating as we plan, continue to plan, and as we implement the plan? These are the things that our stakeholders will hold us accountable around as we do this work. 5 very powerful bullets here. Making decisions with careful regard to research, respect for community input, thus, while we're doing what we're doing today, demanding the best of everyone. Internal and external factors we won't allow them to adversely affect our pursuit of excellence, because we plan accordingly based on that, proactively. Honor the worth and the integrity of each person. The result has been 5 strategies that this team developed with big ideas. So you have these as well on the back. The big ideas consists now of small, multiple planning teams of stakeholders, hundreds of people from this community that are coming together around their passion here to work with experts that are internal people that we have around what it means to relentlessly pursue engaged learning through high-quality instruction. We see many examples of what that means: college and career readiness, closing the achievement gap, highly qualified. So we will have action plans around all of these big ideas. 5 strategies, but multiple big ideas within. And we will have a 5-year plan around these strategies. We will phase the plan, phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 implementation will be year 1, year 2. Year 1 will mean 2013-14 school year, which is upon us. That's phase 1, year 1. Year 2 will be 2014-15. Then we will move into phase 2. And then we will move into year 4. Year 5 is renewal. So during the process, I will be reporting to my board at a minimum quarterly around success with these items, quantitatively in a way that we can measure, and qualitatively in a way that we can measure how we're doing with this, which means it can be placed to your hands to give to your constituents and your stakeholders when they ask, what is public education about in Norfolk? You can say, we know our challenges, but here's how we're facing them, and here's how we're moving forward. And here are examples of where we're going. So hosting environments in which all individuals feel safe and secure, they develop that. Nurturing a culture of excellence, equity, and justice throughout continuous improvement. Creating the cornerstone of our community's well-being, empowering and facilitating meaningful family and community partnerships. Engaging alumni and partners. You're going to see a clear example of a graduate from Norfolk Public School System that works with Apple, already coming back to us saying, we see what you're doing, we see where you're headed, but we want to give back. And so we want to see more of that, and I think this is a good example of that.
It's really given me a foundation to build from, and then I also think it was very important to be part of a very diverse school system. The world we're in is very diverse, our nation's very diverse, and that was huge for me. And then I also learned some phenomenal collaboration skills that have really helped me in my life.
An example of what that means and what that can do for us, and that's just a clip of many other, we're actually foreshadowing for what's coming. So how can you help? I think I've given you multiple examples throughout this morning, but if you take a look at these 3 bullets, you know the significance of the Education Foundation, and that is only going to become stronger as it relates to our work. Investing in public education, advocating for public education, and telling the story. But we are very transparent about the work. It's a different way of doing business. We will tell you what our challenges are. We will tell you what our struggles are. But we won't just lay those on your table. We will say, here are our challenges and here are our plans for addressing them. And then you determine where you fit. A+ Community Partners Program. And of course, the foundation will host multiple events throughout the year to welcome new partners and honor existing partners. I think one example of what's coming is that we're going to host a regional discussion around urban education here real soon, where other school systems are going to come to us to talk about the work. They will bring their boards, they will bring their superintendent, and we will enter into collaborative discussions around what it means to do this work. That's a little bit different, and we know that that's important, but it will be held right here, and you'll hear more about that as well. One example for us centers on something around which you're very familiar, which would be Principal for a Day. It has given you an opportunity to go into our schools, to see the work, to see the children, to see what is really happening in schools. I try to block off time weekly to go into schools. I call them school visits. And when I go, people don't know where I am, they don't know where I'm going. I just show up and we talk. And I am not opposed to taking stakeholders with me because it's your investment, it's my investment, it's ours. So anybody that's free to do that and you want to join with me one day, give me a call and let me know, and we can go in and you can look at what we are doing and how we're facing the challenges that are before us. So Principal for a Day was a major opportunity for this community to come together to see that firsthand.
This is our third annual Principal for a Day program, and this is really an opportunity for the foundation to go back on its mission, which is to drive community investment back in our public schools and provide an opportunity for the public really to get back in public schools. This is an opportunity for business, civic, clergy. We have the gamut here, military officers, all for an opportunity to focus on something that we don't necessarily focus so much on. We talk about the classroom, but strong schools really have strong leaders, and so getting an opportunity to see what the principal has to go through and what it takes to be a principal at a school. This is what, it's just an opportunity for the foundation to support that initiative.
I think it's a wonderful program to allow a different perspective for them to come in and actually walk through what a principal does during the day, to get the perspective of what the teachers are facing in the classroom, and to see just a whole picture of the safety and all the components that makes our schools successful.
I think it's a great opportunity because you see behind the walls as when you drive by every day, all you see is the name of the schools. Coming inside, you see what it actually takes, what makes up the school.
These teachers are a lot of our clients, and I'd be able to interact with them, see how they perform every day, and I know it's just awesome to be a part of it.
A lot of the outside folks really don't know what's going on in these schools, and these kids are really learning. I mean, I'm really impressed.
I think this is a wonderful program, and hopefully more people can participate and really understand more about their local school district and the educational system. They're doing great things here and across the district.
You don't have to rely on maybe a newspaper article or somebody telling you something about what they heard or what they saw. It's just actually being here. And it's amazing from the moment the students came in to where we are right now, just the structure and the dedication I'm seeing from the principal, the teachers, the whole leadership team. It's incredible.
So I will not sugarcoat the challenge. We are about being transparent. Our system is approximately 67% economically disadvantaged. That's a statistic. It's not a variable that should interfere in progress. It is a variable that we must use as we plan. But you need to know and you need to understand that, because when we say that, it has implications for how prepared our children are day one when they enter the classroom. Not because they have bad families, but because maybe they weren't read to every day. Maybe they didn't have a print-rich environment. Maybe it was not text-rich. Maybe they don't understand phonemic awareness, letter and number recognition. But guess what? It is our responsibility to give that to them if they didn't receive it at home. It is also now our opportunity, I submit to you, to reach out to those families and bring them in or go to them to give them those parenting skills. Thus, the importance of early learning. We're a K-12 organization, yes, but we will not meet our expectations without partnering with the community in a way that we know when a child is born and we have a pattern and a path for them to follow. High quality child care, so that when Sam King sits in the seat as a kindergartner, the gap is closed in terms of his experiences, because you know the research around the number of vocabulary words that may be heard in one household compared to another. Huge gaps in households that are economically disadvantaged compared to those that are not, because that's about education. That's what that is. Not bad people, but people that want to do well for their children. But we have to get them to the point where they can prepare so that they do hear those words. But how do we do that? We have to reach out, form those partnerships, have satellites for quality child care throughout our community, add additional pre-K programs, and we propose to do so this next year, about 10, I hope, additional pre-K programs, so that we can bring the children in and give them those things. Because simply put, we need them to read on grade level or above by the end of 3rd grade to eliminate the dropout rate and to increase the graduation rate. That's the long-term answer. The short-term answer is to give service to children that didn't get what I just described, and they're in middle school now, they're over age, they're in high school now, and they're struggling readers. Okay? That's the challenge. But there are many success stories as well. Understand, we must raise the floor and the ceiling simultaneously. Thus the reason we have to have a 5-year strategic plan that will address all of the areas that come into play in doing this work. So again, thank you for being here, and I think maybe I didn't go over too much and I left some time for questions.
Dr. King, while we're waiting for some questions, and thank you very much for that presentation. Since we have so many members of the business community in our audience today, what is, if you could say to them one thing that you need them to do right now to help Norfolk Public Schools, what would that be? Would it be money? Would it be mentors? Would it be all of that?
It will be get involved. And when I make a reference to getting involved, you know your passion. You know, they know their areas of interest. When I did a quick description of our approximately 35,000 students and their needs, you mentioned the term mentoring. That's huge. That's a prime example of a best practice in urban education. Not just saying that you have a mentoring program, but you have an effective mentoring program with goals, and that it is targeted. And so you'll always hear me say equal is not always equitable. So that means what we need in one school at a certain level is not the same thing as what we need in another school. So it might be a paramount importance in 5 schools compared to X. So we want to start there and build that process. So getting involved, taking a student under your wing, so to speak, and that's no more than seeing that student maybe once a week. Setting goals and expectations for that student outside. That's huge. That's huge. And we're modeling that because members of central office now, they're taking on mentees.
Some mentees
yes.
themselves.
And we're going out to schools and we're taking on students and we're talking to them and partnering with families to do that. So that's just an example. Others would choose to do some things differently. Some would choose to adopt a school. Some would choose to ask a school, what do you need, and write a check. If that's who you are, that's fine. What I am saying is that the partnership, the alliance, it must exist. And you must advocate for public education. And you must believe in the importance of public education as being the lifeblood of the community. Because if you do not, then all these things don't come into fruition. Yes.
You talked about the process in the classroom, the emphasis on being able to teach to the SOL, teach the SOL right. skills and so forth, and how you evaluate now. So based on just your assessment thus far in the 8 months, how do you think we'll do this year?
That's a huge question. I'll begin by saying I see progress each day. I see progress each day, which means that learning in the classroom is increasing. You know, we want to see evidence of that. So much to the point that we have teams from the central office that they will go into schools, do walkthroughs, we call them focus walks, and when we go in, we're looking for certain things. You saw those 5 questions? Those are the things that the team will look for and engage around when they go into schools. So we see evidence of the paradigm shift being made. However, there are ancillary variables that come into play with that. I will give you several examples. The assessments have changed this year. The curriculum has changed this year. We use science as an example, new curriculum, new assessment, different rigor. We use writing as an example, new process, new rollout, new assessment. Assessments are online for the first time this year. If we use language as an example, new approach, new rigor, new assessment, things have changed. The state has predicted that across the state, student achievement will decline as a result of that. Now, what does that mean? That means that's a new curriculum. Teachers are being trained on the new curriculum. They're being trained on new standards, all of those things. Now, those are not excuses, but I am painting a clear picture for all of us around the work. You know, there's a possibility that could serve as somewhat of a camouflaging effect around what we are doing right now. But we can't let that bother us because we know what is really happening in the classroom right now as we speak with making the shift with how we do the work. Are we 100% where we want to be and will be? Absolutely not in 7 months. And so will we be more poised and prepared to do the work and hit the ground running day one next school year? Absolutely. And so if you ask me, is more learning taking place in schools right now based on what we're doing? I would tell you a resounding yes. However, the key is around priorities 1 and 2, getting us fully accredited and seeing an increased percentage of children meeting and exceeding standards. It remains to be seen the impact of those variables that I just described as ancillary and what that could mean with interfering with the new and different work that we are doing. And I hope that's as clear as mud, is it?
But I want to follow up on that for just a minute, because knowing that, thank you, Elizabeth, knowing that those variables and so forth, then if schools are not successful in accreditation this year, that you will still stay on the same course and continue this work so that you can prove that it can work.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We know the formula. The formula that we're rolling out is one that is tried and true. We don't make decisions based on a gut reaction. We make decisions based on what the research tells us, and we make decisions based on what works. Again, I spent 7 years in another system that is a mirror image of this one, but it was simply smaller. The challenges were the same, economically disadvantaged rates, the same, diversity across the system, the same. And in that period of time, we turned the tide, but we turned the tide because we were true to the work in terms of what it means for children. And we were student focused, not adult focused first.
So
make
this is
decisions
helping
based
you
on
then to
children.
manage expectations.
Yes.
In terms of
Yes.
that. Okay, let me get to some of these questions because we only have a little bit of time. This is from John Nunnerly of ODU Center for Educational Partnerships. And he wants to know, how do you foster a spirit of innovation and support change with the constant short-term pressure to quote unquote produce results? It's a little bit about what we were just talking.
It is. I think that's about leadership. That's about doing the work in a way that you include your people. And that's about empowering people to do the job. However, you have to empower people that are at a high level of readiness. So that means build a quality team. As you build a quality team, you rally them around the direction. And so that we are focused in a laser-like approach, with a laser-like approach on the things that you saw, that mission, that vision, that direction. So we don't veer off from that. So it leads, it guides our work, it focuses the board. The board knows that it's going to develop priorities to support that. And so my role as a chief executive officer for this school system is to provide that leadership, to provide that motivation, to set those parameters, and to be that model. If I have to go in the classroom to demonstrate something, then so be it. And so all those things are important as we do the work, but the clock is ticking. And so this is urgent work. That's why we need everybody involved, and we need to understand that where we are right now, it didn't happen overnight. And there are no silver bullets. However, there is a process for being effective in doing this work, and we have to stay the course to see the tide turn.
Okay. This is from Jim Wooford with MacArthur Center. Once the decision is made to move from public to private school training, how or what will bring that student back to public education? He's talking about besides the financial reasons.
When a family makes a decision to go from public to private, they make that decision for a number of reasons. So let's just assume they made that decision because they didn't have trust in the public school system sector. The key to attracting back those individuals, and we will, is to be very transparent around how we communicate our plans for doing the work, and to have a myriad of opportunities, quality, world-class opportunities for families and children, and we're building that, whether it's STEM opportunities, which would be science, technology, engineering, mathematics, which that's where the jobs are going to be, whether it's international baccalaureate, and whether it's other choices, fine arts, performing arts, whatever the case might be, CTE high school, which we're working on around right now, whether it's a governor's school for STEM, any of those things, we can provide those kinds of opportunities that others cannot, and we will, but they must be world class. Number one, that will do it. Of more importance will be the fact that we have to begin to get results. As we begin to move forward and see results and see increases in the amount of learning taking place, that attracts people back. And as you invest and buy into this whole process and people see that we're not going to let public education falter in Norfolk, then people buy in. Who wants to take their college fund early and invest it in private when you had planned to have further investments for years to get them to the college level? So I would submit to you that we can attract back families by doing the work at a high level.
Okay. Peggy Scott from the Norfolk Council PTA. Now that you have great staff and teachers in place, what are your plans to get the parents involved in their children's education?
Okay. We're still in the process of building great staff. We do have great staff. We do have professional learning needs and development. So we're in the midst of doing that. And I believe you mentioned getting parents involved. I think you do more of what we're doing now. The mere design for our strategic plan is to engage stakeholders. That's why we held community forums. That's why we asked stakeholders to be involved in our subcommittees, our planning teams. So it should be quite clear that we want families involved. The other piece, though, is that many of our families that are not involved might not have had good experiences in school. So they'd rather not step foot in school. We have to create a warm, people-centered environment that's inviting to parents. The last piece that I'm going to mention is that we also have to effectively and efficiently use our parent liaisons, because we have those positions. They have to go out and connect with those families as well, whether it's in the churches, whether it's in the community groups, whatever the case might be, the civic groups. That's how we invite them in, so we have to be deliberate about that.
Okay. For time's sake, we've got time for one last question. Okay. This is from Anissa Allen with Norview High School. Is it possible to place a mandatory foreign language component in all public schools to enhance our diverse environment?
You know, I hope that as we enter into the building projects that are before us, I mentioned certain examples like STEM, and a STEM school that we are planning to develop at the elementary level. Also, an international baccalaureate school that we're planning to develop at the elementary level. We hope that we can create a longitudinal feeder and a pipeline so that If you choose STEM at the elementary level, then you can follow that path into middle, and you can follow that path into high school, but you can change your decision making and go a different direction. Same thing with IB, International Baccalaureate. You can do the same thing. Well, there is also some benefit from a dual language standpoint, you know. So that means choices for parents. I hope that what we're going to do, based on what our 5-year strategic plan is saying to us, we have to develop plans around choices for parents. And so the dual language piece is important because of what it does in preparing children beyond high school. So whether it's developing a school that has an emphasis on foreign language early on, and then into middle, and then into high school on dual language, or whether it's a notion of creating those opportunities at the elementary levels within our schools. If we do that at the elementary level and we offer foreign languages across the board in elementary school, then it means that we must invest in it in that way. So the way that we build our budget and the way that we fund must align with what our strategic plan tells us. So the long answer to your question is, yes, that is something that is possible, and that's something that is important to us.
Okay. Elizabeth, we do have, I misspoke, we have one last question that she wanted to get in. Okay. How much money, and there's no name or organization on this one, how much money do you think is needed to build the technology infrastructure for MPS that will allow equal access to technology for all students? Sounds like somebody wants to invest, so speak, so say a high number.
Well, I will base that on what our operations department has done in terms of research. They took a look 3 to 5 years out, and I mentioned to you that we have a piece in our current plan that requires that we upgrade the infrastructure. That simply means being able to put our children on the web to take these assessments without crashing and burning. That's what that means. So we're in the process of developing and upgrading infrastructure in that way. Well, we're taking a look at what's going to be innovative for us in terms of a rollout one-to-one, or whatever the case might be for children. And so, long story short, the last projection that we received from our operations department centered on about, I think, about in the tune of $20+ million would do that. And so, now, I know that's a huge figure. However, that doesn't mean we're going to do that overnight. That means we phase it, because we're investing in the infrastructure now. We're taking a look at what one-to-one really means. And we don't want to do one-to-one just to say we're doing one-to-one. We want one-to-one rollout in a way that it's going to mean that we're preparing our children to be able to compete globally as it relates to technology, but not just that. We're also training and preparing our teachers to use technology as a tool to move student achievement forward. We're not at a point where we can do that. I was in a meeting last night about 7 o'clock with a group of secondary people, and we talked about the challenges around technology and around the fact that she can't put a computer before each child at the same time and be able to run it effectively, because we're not wired that way. I'm not a techie person, but whatever being wired that way means, that's what I'm talking about. And so we have to change that. And so that's why $20+ million will do it. Because when you look at our structures are pretty old. Our facilities are old. And so they're not wired in a way that we can accommodate that. So we're having to do take several different steps in bringing us to the 21st century and beyond.
I know we couldn't get to all the questions that people have, so I'm assuming your office is open, that people can call you if they need to. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Samuel King.
Thank you.
I want to thank you. I've enjoyed serving as your MC this morning. It is morning, right? And lastly, I'd like to call Carlos Clanton to the stage to close us out.
Great, thank you again. Barbara, what's going on up here, Ms. Strokin? Trying to find my place. You all, let's give another round of applause for our Superintendent, Dr. King. For providing us this opportunity to exchange, dialogue, and share ideas and insight this morning. I'd also like to thank SB Ballard Construction, who served as our presenting sponsor this morning. I know they have a table here, and so we want to thank you. And the face of the company, Steve Ballard, couldn't be with us this morning, but he is a member of the Foundation's board, and we want to thank him for his generous support of public education here in Norfolk. And we also like to thank all of our table sponsors, and so all of you all who've, we know in the business world, serving as director of the chamber, I know by that 9 o'clock hour time, it's hard, so I'm going to keep it moving, but I want to thank you all for staying in there and hanging in this morning because public education is very important. So I just want to thank you all again and give you a round of applause for that. As well as our media partner in WHRO and the awesome Channel 47 news team and MPS communications team. As you see the camera operators working with Brian and your team back there. Wave, Brian. I know you're not shy. Go ahead, wave, Brian. We know you're not shy, Brian. But we want to thank all of them for supporting them. It is a family, it is a team when we all come together to put on these type of events to make sure that we can communicate the awesome things that are happening in Norfolk Public Schools to our external community and to bring you all into the fold, and as we say, to put the public back in public schools. So in closing, I want to draw your attention in your programs. I channel Dr. Simmons. She's our committee chair along with John Maddox, with RMM Architect. This year, we're hosting our first annual golf classic. So I've had everybody the gamut of, I don't play golf to, I said, well, join the club. Neither do I. I haven't played since 3rd grade. But we're going to, but I will say that putting on a golf tournament has been an exciting feature here. But June the 19th, make sure you put that in your calendar. We're going to have a 19th hole reception for everyone who doesn't play golf. But for everyone else out there, please share the information. This is a great opportunity. Norfolk Public Schools has not put on a golf tournament, but this is something that we're going to venture out on, and we're going to do first class. And so we want to invite everyone to come out and participate with us on a great fun-filled day. John had told me, he says, Carlos, we do some great programs. He said, but we just want to have some fun. I said, okay, well, it's summertime, let's have some fun, and let's hope for some great weather and that it's not too hot, right? So we're going to be at Cypress Point Country Club on that day, and so we want to encourage you all to spread the word. I'd also like for you all to, the challenge is to stay involved and engaged. So there will be a survey, thank you, appreciation email that will go out that will ask you about how you feel as though you can be engaged with Norfolk Public Schools. And we're going to gather and collect that data. And as we continue with the strategic planning process that will end this coming June 30th, we will re-engage with you all as we begin to move on that 5-year plan and process. So with that, again, thank you. I don't know if I did this already, but the Board of Directors for the Norfolk Education Foundation, if you, my bosses, if you all would stand and be recognized. These are tireless individuals from the community who work day in and day out to support. So with all of that, it is 10 o'clock. Class dismissed, right? You have a great one.